This is the time where I make some witticisms and wisecracks. However, I have a big crack, but it's not that wise. Like, I do have a pretty rapist wit. Maybe that's why I'm still alone. Hi, I'm Casey Mann, and welcome to another installment of Mann'sCanns. So this time, I'm going to have 3 separate episodes. Each of them are going to cover the Bottlehead amplifiers that I have. So Bottlehead is a company that you can order online, and they're DIY, do-it-yourself kits. So what you do is you have to actually take all the parts, solder them, put them together, and build your own amp. I'll start out with the Bottlehead Crack, and then I have the Bottlehead Crack with a speedball upgrade. And finally, I have the Bottlehead Mainline. And they're all 3 different tiers of builds. Okay, so this is the Bottlehead Crack without the speedball upgrade. Now, you might have seen a blurry picture of this in a previous episode in which I reviewed headphones. Part of the reason it's blurry is I wanted to explain the really crappy finish on this. This finish actually is just my test run finish. I put a different stain or finish on this about 4 different times. I just buff it off and put a new one on just for kicks and giggles, but it looks like crap. The Bottlehead Crack goes for about $315 online right now, I think. And the speedball upgrade is $125. Sometimes though, about 2 or 3 times a year, Bottlehead will have a deal where you can buy the Bottlehead Crack with the speedball upgrade for free. So it's $315 for the crack, the speedball upgrade is free. Other times you might get it for like a $20 upgrade, which is totally worth it. But I'll talk more about the speedball later. Right now it's just the Bottlehead Crack. So this, when you first get these, the wood panels are just 4 separate panels. All the pieces and parts, the chassis is just by itself, it's just an aluminum sheet. So you have to glue all the pieces together. You follow a very detailed and helpful instruction guide. So even if you've never built anything before, the place to start for doing your soldering and wire snipping and stripping, this is a good one to start with. I would mention though, that tools that you need to use, you have to have a soldering iron. I recommend a wire cutter that also strips the wire clean, and you need a ruler, solder, of course. I'd recommend 2 different types of solder, one that's pretty thick, another one that's thinner for the more fine-tuning work that goes into it. The amount of time it takes to build this, if you're brand new at it, I would say it's 8 to 10 hours. But if you're really familiar with the process of putting an amp together, or you work with electronics in any way like that, you could probably do it in like 4 to 6 hours. But for me, I really took my time on it. I think it took about 9 hours to build it. And so the tubes, I removed them. You have an input tube and an output tube. And so before, on the picture I showed on the Verite review, that I had the Sovtech 6AS7G in place of the regular 6080. So the input tube comes with the 12AU7. So this is what it looks like without the tubes put on. But what's fun about these builds is not just the satisfaction of building it by yourself and putting something together, but it's also fun to have a really good sounding tube amplifier at the price point that it's at. Output transformerless means OTL. I'm not really a super technical guy, and this is more for people who don't really know much about headphones, so it's more fun just to kind of talk about the basics. if you have an OTL amplifier, it does well with higher impedance headphones. And so 150 ohm, 300 ohm headphones are going to sound really nice with this. I noticed that with lower impedance, like 62 ohm headphones that are dynamic, it just kind of, it seems to clip too much. Clipping is where it's causing a certain audio distortion, and it makes a fuzziness on it. So I recommend using it with higher ohm headphones, higher resistance. I find that the Bottlehead Crack is a perfect marriage with the Sennheiser HD 650. And I know I bring up the 650 a lot. It's one of my favorite headphones. But with this amplifier, it really pushed it up to a new level. And so with that, I'm going to show the innards, which is kind of fun. So after you built it, it ends up looking like this. And I'll do a little flyby video as I discuss it. So this build ultimately takes about, like I said, about 8 hours put together. And some of the harder parts, the most difficult elements, are putting together the little LED lights, which are located right here. They're a real pain in the butt, and you got to be careful not to strip the really thin metal filaments. The instruction guide is very detailed. It's very user-friendly, and if you've never done it before, that's cool. And at the same time, once you finish this build, you will need a multimeter to be able to check voltage after you've put everything together. So what does it sound like? It sounds really, really good, actually. So what I like about tube amplifiers is that they typically have a little more organic or wet sound versus a solid state amp. So a solid state is a newer technology after vacuum tubes stopped being used. So solid state is more modern technology. It's still really old, but vacuum tubes, they don't really sell anymore. Very few factories make them now. Most people have tubes that are N.O.S tubes, N.O.S, which means new original stock. And what that means is they were built in the 40s, the 50s, 60s, even the 70s, and then people buy them, but they're in new condition or light new condition. So as time goes by, more people are buying tubes, especially the popular ones. And what happens is if you stick a different tube into here, it provides its own equalization. So it provides a different sound signature, and it can complement or not sound as good depending on what tube you have with the amplifier that you are using. So with this, it comes with the 6080 and the 12AU7, like I mentioned before. I think the 6080 is a really good tube for the Bottlehead Crack, and it's a good choice on their part. I did use the 6AS7G for just the normal Bottlehead Crack, not the Speedball. And a lot of people think that their version of the 6AS7G provides more thumpy bass, a little bit richer mids. But for me, I noticed that with this, I recognized kind of a little bit more clear mids. The bass is about the same, and I think the highs are a little bit more refined. This is just with the Bottlehead Crack. But with the 6080 and the stock tubes included on this with the build, I think it sounds quite spectacular for 300 bucks. And also it's fun building it yourself. A lot of people modify these. So this has rust that builds on it. It's typical. Some people might put a lacquer finish, or they'll paint it in acrylic and then put lacquer over it so it'll never rust and it has a different appearance and color. They might paint this and then they do their own thing. They might even make their own case and just put their own build on it. So then this can look like something entirely different. Also, people do a lot of upgrades on the components because these are serviceable, but not the best. So they'll change the RCA cables, they'll change the headphone jack, maybe even here, put the on-off switch. And then in here, they'll put in like huge capacitors and other crazy dongles and stuff like that. I don't know if it would really make a huge difference, but at the same time, people do that as a hobby. But in terms of increasing a $300 hand-built, do-it-yourself amplifier, I'm not sure if it'd be worth it sound quality wise versus just getting a better quality amplifier. But I'm not talking down to those people. That's great. I would love to be able to do something like that, but I don't. I do a lot of things in my life, so it's just kind of, if I go down that cave, you know, there's always a rabbit hole for me. As you keep going farther and farther and looking into things, it becomes farther from where you started, and you're just spending more money and sinking up all your time. Depending on if you have the money and the time, how much of that do you want to invest versus spending your time and money on other things? So with the Bottlehead Crack, I'm happy with what it is for the price range. Definitely a good deal for the price. It's a fun build. It sounds really good. It's got a really good deep bass and low end. The mids are pretty well defined. It's, like I said, a perfect complement with the 650, but other headphones, dynamic headphones at 150 or 300 ohm, will be very well complemented with the OTL amplifiers. And so this is a fairly simple piece of machinery, but it's very nice. If you get the Speedball Crack, the Crack with the Speedball upgrade, then I recommend just building the original Crack design first. Make sure that it works, and then once you get it working, then upgrade to the Speedball, because then you can troubleshoot that issues are at the Speedball level, not at the original Crack level. So it's very helpful that way. Also, you can make sound comparisons, which is what I did. So I'll talk about the Speedball on my next episode. And with that, thank you for your time.